high. Noel Hoffmeyer moves midpoint into the slot. Joe Garefa, he shoots, he scores! Joe Garefa outweighs the goaltender. His second of the game. It's 6-2 Ottawa. Hardy has a breakaway from his own blue line. James Hardy in behind the D, takes a shot. Pass save made by Andre. Jack Quinn back to Hoffmeyer. His one-timer, he scores! A hop bomb from Noel Hoffmeyer, top corner.
Rossi has Keating in front. Rossi, nice move, and he scores! Oh, what a play by Marco Rossi!
Here's Austin Keating, partial break. Keating shoots, he scores! Austin Keating, third point of the game, gives Ottawa a 3-1 lead. Streaking in behind Kevin Ball. What a save by Cedric Andre. His play finds Austin Keating. Right side, Jack Quinn works his way into the offensive zone, gets by the defense and scores! Individual effort from Jack Quinn. Rossi checks up the puck down low. Rossi goes to the backhand, he scores! Oh my goodness! What move from Marco Rossi! Here's Marco Rossi, he's gaining ahead of speed. Rossi down the left side, has Hoffmeyer with them. Rossi holds, Hoffmeyer scores! First career OHL hat-trick for Noel Hoffmeyer, wins the game in overtime.
You're tuned into another edition of OHL Voices featuring play-by-play personalities from across the Ontario Hockey League. Today's guest is undoubtedly the best dressed in the league, sporting a diverse range of suits that include jack-o'-lanterns, Christmas trees, and my personal favorite, Where's Waldo? Kenny Walls, voice of the Ottawa 67's, joins us. Kenny, nice to have you on today.
Oh, fantastic to be here, Josh. Thanks for having me. The
So
suits.
as I bang on with those suits, do you actually own all those?
Yeah, I own all of them, and at this point, it's hard to turn away from them. Once you own them and the closet gets full, you can't go back to a regular suit on an everyday basis. So I save them all for hockey season, and I think there's about 35 to 40 in there right now.
Yeah, I've seen a few of them in my time in the league. One of my favorite elements, of course, this little spot is just the opportunity to get to know some of the guys behind the microphone. They've all got personalities, and if you haven't been able to tell yet, Kenny's certainly got one. Just walk us through, maybe give us a little bit of a snapshot of your career, how long you've been calling 67's games, and maybe a little bit on what you do outside of the 67's broadcast booth.
Well, I got incredibly lucky getting into it. I was hired as a part-time fill-in disc flipper back at one of the stations in Ottawa, and eventually over a couple months moved up to the news talk station, and then a promotion to the morning show producing on the sports radio station. And along with that was to be the on-site producer for the Ottawa 67's games, making sure that they get on air and stay on air. Any interviews that they do, they didn't have the technology that we do now, where we can just record everything on our phone and send it back. It was all done on hand, and then you had to play it back live and in person. So that was my responsibilities there. And as I was there for a few years, I was able to sneak into the color commentary role and beside AJ Jackiebeck, John Abbott while he was there, and Dave Schreiber. And eventually it led into me being at the right place at the right time, where they happened to run out of bodies and needed somebody to step in to do play-by-play. And I took advantage of it, and I've been there since. And I think I've been around the team since 2005 or 6. It's been quite a while now, but play-by-play for the last 4 years. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. I absolutely love it. Being around the kids keeps you young, for sure. And being around the staff, you just learn so much around Andre Tourigny, Norm Milley, Mario Duhamel, and everybody around the Ottawa 67's. It's a fantastic environment. I couldn't ask for any more. And outside of that, I work for TSN 1200. I produce the midday show there here in Ottawa, In the Box. And that's talking about sports for 4 hours a day and listening to a radio show. So I can't complain about anything I do. Everything has basically fallen into my lap, and I'm one of the luckiest people in the world.
Certainly not a bad deal. Been a wildly successful past couple seasons in Ottawa. You've had a front row seat for 100 wins over 2 seasons, a pair of back-to-back Hamilton Spectator trophies, 2 East Division titles, and an Eastern Conference championship. No doubt it's been a very special group. What's it been like seeing it all come together?
Seeing it from the inside, it's hard to believe that this humble group, starting at the top with James Boyd, Andre Tourigny, does what they do. because there's not an ounce of ego on these kids, on the coaching staff. They just try and get better each and every day. And it's a cliche for teams to say, we're just focused on the process. But that's all they do. They focus on the process, and the results take care of themselves. And I've never seen anything like it. It is a pleasure to be around because they are such hardworking young men. The coaching staff does the same thing. And being able to see it from a semi-inside point of view, it's incredible because what they did the day before isn't good enough the next day. And I think that's an incredible attitude to have. And it's not just one or two players. It's not just Marco Rossi. It's not just the sixth defenseman on the team. It's everybody. Everybody buys into it, and that's what makes it a special group. That's why they're able to push themselves to the next level and be a competitive team. And I think as long as they continue to do that, and as long as that attitude stays there, which I don't see going away with the coaching staff that they have, this is going to be a successful franchise in the OHL, and it gets passed down from generation of players to the next generation. And I think that the kids coming up, the 03 group and the 02 group, have the same attitude that the graduating players did, the 5-year vets like Austin Keating and Noel Hoffenmeyer did, where they just brought their lunch pail to the rink and went to work each and every day. And I think that's what's made the 67's the most successful franchise over the past 2 years when you look at the whole of it. And that's, to me, is the incredible part. The wins, the playoff success that they had, what could have been this season or this past season, it all comes down to that day-to-day attitude where they just look to get better.
Maybe take me back to the 2019 playoffs where the 67's were just a steamroller, winning 14 straight and even going up 2-0 on Guelph before things really just sort of unraveled. And they were close games, but just whether it was the bounces or just something shifted. Do you have a good recollection of that series? And was there one thing in particular that maybe you felt impacted the way things ended up going? I mean, having watched a lot of it myself, I remember coming away with the impression that Guelph was a bigger, more physical team, and kind of as the series wore on, they kind of wore the 67's down that way. But I'm sure it's more than just that. And I'm interested to hear your perspectives, a year and a half down the road.
Yeah, you can't look past the injury to Mikey DiPietro. That's a game changer. And as good as Cedric Andre is, and one of the best goaltenders in the league, one of the best goaltenders in 67's history, when you look at the numbers that he's been able to put up over the past 2 years, 2+ seasons, he's been phenomenal. But he doesn't have, or at that time didn't have, the pedigree and the ability to get into opposing players' minds. Because to me, it seemed like everybody on the ice, when Mikey was in net, would try and make that extra pass, try and set up that perfect goal, because they figured that he was just going to stop the first shot no matter what. And you were going to have to do something special to beat him. And I think that's where Guelph gained a little bit of confidence. The first 2 games were tight. They were close. They were very good games. But I think that DiPietro had that ability to get inside of shooters' heads. And I don't think that can be discounted. And Cedric came in, stole game 2. He was unbelievable in relief. And the only reason why a very big reason why the 67's won that second game. But it just seemed like there was that shift in mentality. And yes, the Storm are bigger. Everybody remembers the performance that Suzuki put on. He was phenomenal in the series. But Alexei Toropchenko was the game changer. He was a wrecking ball in that series. He would hit guys. He was scoring goals. He was doing everything that you could ask from a player. And he was a big factor in that. The veteran leadership that Guelph had was undeniable. The trades that they made leading into the trade deadline were massive. Suzuki, obviously, but I think the 67's were that smaller team. They were relying on skill. They have a ton of work ethic. They weren't afraid of Guelph, but I think they were started to get worn down. And for me, the injury to DiPietro did set them back just a little bit. Mindset. I don't think it showed up when they went to the rink, but in the back of your mind, for the Storm, you're not facing the best goaltender in the OHL at that point. You're facing Cedric Andre, who, yeah, he had 30 wins. Yes, he's a very good goaltender, but he's not DiPietro. And I think that was, for me, one of the bigger changing or turning points in the series.
Kind of crazy to talk playoff hockey like this, and it really sinks in that we actually just missed an entire playoff. Kind of depressing, really. But we look at this past year, and we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss it. It just seemed like it was going to be the year for the 67's, and I'm sure everyone will always ask about what could have been.
Absolutely, and you don't have any other question than what could have been for this year, because you're at 50 wins, 60 games, 62 games into the season, and who knows what happens in the playoffs. Peterborough had Ottawa's number for the most part throughout the season, but then it's a 7-game series if they do meet later on in the playoffs. And I know Andre Tourigny and his coaching staff very well, and I can guarantee you that they'd be ready with a game plan to go up against the Petes. And I'm not saying that the Petes wouldn't have a game plan for Ottawa, but I'm well aware of what Andre Tourigny can do with some time to prepare for a team up against Hamilton in the first round of the playoffs a couple of years ago, when Hamilton went on to win the Memorial Cup or the OHL. They said that Ottawa was one of the toughest teams that they faced, and that was a 1-8 matchup just because of how well Ottawa was prepared for that series. So I think it would have been fun to see how Ottawa would have been able to go through the East and maybe onto the OHL final and see where things go from there. But then it's a depressing exercise, because then you get into the what ifs and what could have been, because when you look at this team, Noel Hoffenmeyer, OHL Defenseman of the Year, Austin Keating, Overager of the Year, Marco Rossi, 120 points, Red Tilson Award winner. They had some special pieces that, in Marco's case, likely won't be returning to the OHL next season. So it leaves a sour taste in my mouth, because I would have loved to see it go down and ride the wave that it was the Ottawa 67's. But now it's just a fond memory and a second straight 50-win season. And you think of what could have been and what a special team it was to put up the kind of numbers that they were able to.
We'll always look back and say that was 2020.
There's a lot of things that you can say like that about 2020.
I'm a big fan of the comms department in Ottawa and the work that they do to kind of give the fans an inside look at the team behind the scenes. Through guys like Felber, Hoffenmeyer, Keating, and so on, it really seems like the 67's are a loose bunch. They like to have fun, and that often starts with coaching and the culture that the hockey operations staff allow to flourish in the dressing room. What can you say about Andre Tourigny and his staff and their effect on the group, maybe just enabling those guys to be themselves?
That's exactly it. They demand the best on the ice, but they still allow the players to do it within themselves. You look at Ty Felber and how far he came from a rookie in Saginaw, where he had a good rookie season and then things kind of tailed off for him. He comes to Ottawa and he's a different player. He has that confidence to be able to be himself. He's a serious, goofy guy. He takes the game of hockey very seriously, but he doesn't take himself overly seriously. And growing up in Pembroke, a Valley kid here in Ottawa, it's fun to be around him because he's a character. And Austin Keating, again, a guy who loves the game of hockey, loves to compete, loves every aspect of it, but wants to have fun while doing it. And I think that's where Andre Tourigny allows players to be themselves. If you're a quiet kid, he allows you to be a quiet kid. If you're outgoing and exuberant, you're allowed to be outgoing and exuberant. You're not just typed into, you have to be this player, and if you're anything other than that, we don't want you around. Everybody's allowed to be themselves, and I have so much respect for Andre Tourigny, the entire coaching staff, the entire staff with the Ottawa 67's, top to bottom, for the job that they do. And they all do an outstanding job. They all have specific roles. Sean Young, as a strength and conditioning coach, is a happy-go-lucky guy, but when he's working And when he expects the players to work, they work, because that's what they're supposed to do at that given time. It's a well-oiled machine, and they have fun. They put a ton of time into organizing how they want to set things up for the year, and then they follow through with it. And it's so much fun to watch. And from the time when Brian Kilray Killer was around, and you can see him right there, it's changed quite a bit. It's not the same. It's not the same thing. Killer had a way of doing it, and Andre, while he's still kind of an old school guy, he has a lot of new approaches and communicates with his players. And I think there's that little back and forth between the players where they're not afraid to go in and talk to coach and suggest a way of doing things, and it's considered. And I think that open communication goes a long way in the way that the world works right now.
Of course, you said it, the extensive history, decorated past of the 67's is, among the league's most illustrious, and so many of the game's greats have come out of the nation's capital and worn the Barber poles. And, Killer, his legacy is the winningest coach in the CHL. Do you see him around the rink much? I'm sure him and his old friend Bert O'Brien still like to catch a game.
Yeah, I see him around 1 out of every 4 games. At most. He's around quite a bit. Still goes to tournaments as well. He just loves hockey. To get him out of a rink, I think, is almost impossible. He is such a pleasure to be around, and the wealth of knowledge, the stories. Every time you see him, he's got a new story. And maybe it's 30, 40 years old, but he hasn't told it in 5 years. And I've had the opportunity to golf with him and be around him on the golf course. And the stories that flow there are phenomenal. The time I almost hit him with a golf ball isn't a great story, but he is one of a kind. And I absolutely love the fact that I've gotten to know him over the years, and I can't say how much it means that I can go up and say, "Hi, Killer," and he's like, "Hey, Lurch, how are you?" And it's it's a nice feeling to know that a hockey legend knows who you are.
Absolutely. From one GM in Brian Kilray to another in James Boyd, who was in fact the inaugural recipient of the Jim Gregory OHL GM of the Year this past season, I've come away, really impressed with the way that Ottawa has managed assets, even with those back-to-back Hamilton Spectator pennants up in the rafters. The team still managed to take 14 players inside the opening 5 rounds of the last 2 drafts. And despite losing some of the older guys like Hoffenmeyer and Keating, as we've discussed, it still puts the 67's in a pretty respectable position coming into next season, with so many, promising young names really fighting for ice time and responsibility.
Yeah, James has done a phenomenal job. There's no doubt about it. But it all goes back to Jeff Brown as well, and the acquisition of assets in the Travis Konechny deal, and acquiring Sasha Chmelevski in that Konechny deal. It was a masterful job to get assets by Jeff Brown, and it set James Boyd up. And James has mentioned that numerous times, where oftentimes a new general manager will come into a situation where the cupboards are empty and there's not a whole lot to work with. You've got to rebuild. There's got to be something in place to really rebrand the team. Well, a lot of pieces were already with the Ottawa 67's when James came in and when Andre came in, and they've tweaked, they've managed, they've brought in overage players. Kyle Maximovich, Lucas Chiodo on their run last year, Joe Garefa this year. They've made some interesting deals, still acquiring assets, and trading a guy like Matt Maggio, I know, had to be killing them. As a 5th-round pick, you trade him for 2 second-round picks. So you look at the asset management there. He's a wonderful, wonderful young man, and well-liked inside the Ottawa 67's dressing room. He's going to be a great player in the OHL. But when you can acquire 2 second-round draft picks for the future, then sometimes you have to say bye to a phenomenal player to rebuild. And I think that's what James has done. The asset management that they've gone through is incredible. But I think it all goes back to Jeff Brown setting them up, and then this staff being responsible with the deals that they've made and haven't gone all in to make the big splashes and trade away key young players. They want to keep the nucleus of this team together for the most part and bring in a piece here and there to bolster the lineup, but they love the kids that they've drafted. They want to keep them together and build for the future and continue to have the type of success that they have had the last couple of years and be a contender year in, year out.
Certainly, a lot to look forward to, but hey, it's July, it's summertime. Despite all the COVID-19 stuff going on, I hope you and the family have had a chance to enjoy some of the outdoor weather, and I'm sure I speak for both of us when I say, looking forward to when the puck drops in the OHL once again.
As nice as this 40-degree weather has been, I'm looking forward to putting on my suit again, the winter boots or the winter dress shoes, and getting back into a nice cold rink very soon.
Kenny, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Josh.